the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to have with me Jennie Jarvis. Jennie, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Jennie Jarvis. I am an award-winning screenwriter and novelist. I currently teach in a master's film production program at Full Sail University, which is in Winter Park, Florida, which is right around Orlando. When I was working in Hollywood, I actually worked in development, which is kind of that unknown aspect of filmmaking that is between the screenwriting process and pre-production. So we basically help scripts get better. But I am now still an independent script consultant and developmental editor for novels.
You sound like you're a very, very busy person.
I am always a very busy person. I also run a writing conference and I teach workshops, and I'm always busy.
Well, I'm going to start off with the very most basic question. Screenwriting. Is it different than writing a play? I know that it's different than writing a novel, but let's just start there. Describe screenwriting for me.
Sure. Screenwriting is different from every other kind of medium writing. It's even different from television writing. People think like film writing and TV writing are the same thing. They're kind of not. It's almost like if you had two people speaking Spanish, one of them from Spain and one of them from South America. It's similar, but not exactly the same. But essentially, it's a different form of writing in that it is a highly structured medium. You have to have very, very specific software to write in it. And it is not, it's similar to playwriting in that there is a lot more dialogue. There's significantly less description, but you're not only writing for the characters, you're also kind of writing for the camera, not necessarily writing camera directions, but you have to be able to tell a story through visuals. So instead of just having two people on a stage having an argument, you might need to look at what else is happening around them. You know, you're not just writing the characters, but you're writing what the camera is going to point at. So maybe as they're fighting, they're chopping up carrots really, really violently or something like that. But it is a form of writing where you are completely stuck looking only at what a character is saying or what a character is doing. You cannot go into their head. You can't have any backstory. You can't have any thoughts or feelings. So it's very much like, what can you see on the screen? And that is what you are writing.
How does the character come to life then? So if we don't know the backstory, when I write a novel, for example, I do a whole character profile. And I know exactly what they were doing when they were 3 years old. I know the color of their eyes. I know what they were thinking their first girlfriend, even though I might start them at age 30. Mm-hmm. So how do we get into their head if we're not putting that on the paper for a screenwriting assignment?
So as a screenwriter, you are still going to create, a big character profile, a character Bible, whatever pre-writing tool you use. You're still creating all of that, but the audience is never going to know that. They're never going to be given that information. And so what I like to say is, think of one of your favorite movies, right? So let's say, for example, if we think about Black Panther, right? It's an absolutely amazing film. So with T'Challa, sorry, I'm tripping on his name, T'Challa, you don't get a lot of backstory from him. You learn more about his father than you do about him, but we still understand what kind of man he is. And it all has to do with his actions, with the way that he speaks, the way that he treats other people, his morality, his moral compass overall, the choices he makes, as Sid Fields, who's like this big guru kind of in the screenwriting world, he specifically says that action is character. So you could put two people into a room and you give them both the exact same choice. Who they are, what their backstory is going to determine how they behave in that situation, but we don't have to necessarily know all that information.
If you have the character walks onto screen and he's a big guy and he's got a very masculine persona, if I'm thinking Black Panther, is it the director's choice to make him that way, or is it the actor's choice? How does that play in?
So it's very much a combination. So a lot of people think that, in the novel writing world, when you write a story and you get it published, that is still your story. You still own it. That is not the case in screenwriting. A lot of people tend to be very shocked that you learn when you sell a screenplay, you sell everything. You sell the rights to it. And if you are a new writer, one of the first things that happens in a screenplay is if they buy your screenplay, you usually are replaced. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we can't have people that are in love with their story, because then they get protective of it. They're like, oh, my baby, I can't. And there can only be one person with a driving vision on a set, and that is the director. Now, a good director is going to hire really solid actors who are going to bring things to the table, and the director will work with the actor, but for the most part, the actor kind of creates that role. They bring it to life in a certain way, but because the director oversees the vision overall, it can affect the performance. So sometimes even just the choice of costume that the director approves is going to make the actor walk different. And so there's a lot of conversations that happen between the director and the actors before you go on set. Sometimes there's even rehearsals. With the really big budget kind of actors, there's not as much rehearsing usually ahead of time, but there's a lot of conversations about, okay, who is this character? What do they look like? The writer is not involved in those conversations for the most part. Every now and then you'll have a director who's like, let's bring the writer in, but for the most part, it's usually the director and actor shaping that themselves.
This is super fascinating. All right. I'm just going to jump ahead. Are there tools to help somebody write a script?
Yes, absolutely. The most important thing you can have is Final Draft, which is a screenwriting software. A lot of people say, oh, well, the format's really specific, but I could create it in Word, or there's free ones out there. No, don't use those. I'm currently judging for a major screenwriting competition, which I'm not going to reveal on the air which one it is, but it's one of the major ones. And I have to tell you, every single script that's come across, it's been written in either a free software, it's been written in Microsoft Word. We've said no on all of them because they're not good, because it shows you don't understand the industry. So Final Draft is a software that it's not just for writing the screenplay, but that software connects to so many other programs within the filmmaking industry. So you can export your screenplay from Final Draft and it can go into softwares that help with budget, that help with scheduling, that talks about breaking down for props or costumes or casting. And so it's part of an entire industry. And so it's not just like, oh, look, I wrote my book in Microsoft Word and now it's going off and other people are doing other thing with whatever software they have. No, it's an integrative part. So Final Draft is by far and away the best you can do. And once you have a Final Draft code, you can actually download so many resources off of their websites. They have sample screenplays, sample television scripts. They have lots of opportunities there. But then there's also just really great craft books about screenwriting. So you can look at, like I mentioned before, Sid Field. He wrote a Screenplay, which is kind of the granddaddy of screenplay structure. You also have like Save the Cat, the last book on screenwriting you'll ever need, but then he wrote 2 more books after that, and then shameless plug, I have a book called Crafting the Character Arc, that also talks about screenwriting structure and looking at, how should a screenplay read, but ultimately, more than anything, if you want to write screenplays, you need to be reading screenplays, and they do exist out there. You can buy some through like Barnes & Noble or your local bookshop, but then they also have some that are circulated as PDF files around the time of the Oscars. They tend to be circulated on different websites. No Film School is a great resource for that. And just read screenplays and see, how does a screenplay read? Because it's not like in the world of novels where form follows function and you can kind of experiment with things. There is a very specific structure. If you're following the Save the Cat beat sheet, something very specific has to happen on page 75, not 74, not 76. It must happen on 75. You know what I mean? And something has to happen on page 30. Something has to happen on page 45. There's these very specific, almost right by numbers guide that you have to use that's expected in the industry. Now, obviously, if you go the independent route, you can do whatever you want, right? So if we talk about like Barry Jenkins, who wrote and directed Moonlight, his script basically reads like poetry. It is gorgeous, but he could never sell it in Hollywood. Now he can do whatever he wants. He's Barry Jenkins. We all know who he is, right? But when he was first starting out, he couldn't send those kinds of scripts out and get positive feedback because it looked so different, it read so different. But now that he's made a name for himself, he can do whatever he wanted. But he came through the independent world where he, he and some friends from film school got together and they made this film Moonlight. And as a result of the success of that, now he has a lot more latitude in terms of what he can get away with. But for people who don't have any kind of experience from the outside, there is an industry standard and you are expected to write to that if you want to break in.
I like all this information. So if I have a screenplay and I know that it's going to be, let's suppose I'm trying to pitch it, I'm trying to sell it, should I turn it into a novel so that I could at least own the characters?
So that is definitely one route. Stephen Chbosky, who wrote The Perks of Being a Wallflower, he also had just Imaginary Friend, which is a great, like a little horror novel, came out last year. But he wrote Perks of Being a Wallflower knowing that he wanted to turn it into a film. He went to USC Film School. He wrote the screenplay of Perks of Being a Wallflower. It was based in part on his experiences in high school. And so he knew he wanted to write and direct the screenplay. He wanted to have as much protection as he could. And so he wrote the novel of Perks of Being a Wallflower. He got it published and it became this cult classic, right? So he was able to kind of protect that work a little bit more, because if you write something as a novel first and then it gets turned into a movie, what you're doing is you're not selling the copyright to everything, you're just selling the film rights, right? So you protect your rights in that way. If you go just specifically from a screenplay and you sell just the screenplay, they're going to buy everything. But you can't like sell it and then turn around and write the novel. It's not really going to work that way. So you have to do novel first. However, there is a catch-22 there. If you write the novel and you get it published, either you self-publish it or you go through more traditional means. If the numbers are not high, no matter how good the story is, there is a potential that that could kill your deal. So if you have a really good story and you sell it as a screenplay, you could potentially be a nobody and sell it as a screenplay. However, you put it out in the world first as a book. If the numbers are not where they need to be for a very long time, we're starting to see some change in this industry, but for the most part, if the numbers are not where they need to be, you could shoot yourself in the foot and you could kill your deal. So you might have had a 6-figure deal had you gone straight with screenplay, but then you decide, okay, I'm going to self-publish it, and you sell your 2,000 copies or whatever, which, let's face it, 2,000 copies for a self-published author is not bad. It's pretty darn good. Let's say that you self-publish it and you sell 20,000 copies. That's amazing for you. Hollywood looks at that number and go, 20,000, that's it? God, there's no market for this. Because it's low for film, because they deal on an exponentially higher level. When they're talking about, oh, this was a really bad week at the box office, they're looking at $30 million and saying that's bad. You know what I mean? So they're just on a different level when it comes to numbers. And so you have to make sure that, if you're going to go that route of trying to publish it first, when you publish it, it better be awesome. Like, it better knock everybody's socks out. Like, if you're going to self-publish it, it better be The Martian. You know what I mean? It can't be, Bob's book.
Oh, but what's wrong with Bob's book?
Well, Bob's book had typos and spelling errors and a really bad cover. I don't know what's wrong with Bob's book.
That could kill any book.
It would kill any book.
So let's just talk quickly about Netflix and all the others that are now making their own movies.
Yes.
First of all, I'm like amazed that they're able to have such big budgets with my $15 a month subscription. I mean, there must be so many people that subscribe, because Netflix, maybe they do product placement and they get advertising and all that stuff. But I'm really amazed at that. But there's much more than just Netflix for competition.
Yeah, so in terms of financing, you also have to think with some of these companies that are publicly traded, they're also kind of backed by the stock market. They have investors. They do foreign sales of their films in other territories. Netflix is worldwide at this point. I mean, it's not worldwide. It's not every country, but a lot of countries around the world have Netflix. So it is more than the US, but if you think about, HBO, right? So people never had an issue thinking of, oh, well, HBO has the budget to do this because we kind of bought it as part of our cable package, right? Well, if we spent $20 a month on HBO, right? through our cable provider. Let's say like $15 of that went to our cable provider. Only like $5 ever got back to HBO. But now if you have HBO Go, you're paying them $15 a month and it's direct. So we're paying less, they're getting more. Everybody wins except for the cable provider who is charging too much anyway, right? So that's where a lot of that money comes from. But yeah, they're experimenting with a lot more content. Hollywood itself had kind of thought that romantic comedies were dead, and now romantic comedies tend to be Netflix's bread and butter lately with a lot of their things. But yeah, they're expanding to new territories, which is both good and bad. With the film side, we're just kind of seeing the good stuff. We see them taking chances on films like Bright. We see them taking chances on films like what was the one where you have Thor jumping off a mountain at the beginning. It's Extraction, right? It's like this big action film, right? So we have these kind of risks within movies. Within television, we're also seeing them trying to push and break new grounds, but unfortunately what we're seeing is that they're trying these new things, and even if there's an audience, they start canceling them because they have their own kind of criteria of what a success is and what isn't. So there have been some writers that have been a little frustrated with Netflix simply because they don't know, well, what does a successful show look like to Netflix? And what does a successful show not look like to Netflix? So when it comes to television, there's been a little bit more frustration. But yeah, we've been seeing some new genres kind of popping up that we haven't seen for a while in the movies. Because, in the movies, we've got, Marvel's 53rd film, which I'm very much looking to their 54th film, But I love Marvel. But we are seeing some genres that haven't been as well represented in recent years. We're starting to see them coming up on the streaming services.
You are such a wealth of knowledge. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can find me. I'm on social media, both on Facebook and Twitter. My handle is at Jarvis Writes. So speaking of Marvel, Jarvis, just like an Iron Man, Jarvis, Writes, like WRITES. So you can find me on Twitter at Jarvis Writes or Facebook.com/Jarvis Writes, or they can email me, jarviswrites@gmail.com. I do ask that nobody send me any pages of their screenplay unless, you have acquired me as a consultant. I do still do independent script consulting. So if anybody is interested in hiring me as a consultant, we can definitely discuss rates. But unfortunately, between my students and my clients, I'm a little bit overwhelmed and I'm not able to do anything pro bono right now, which is a shame, but it's just my sanity.
Do you have any workshops coming up?
Do I have any workshops that is available to the public? Well, I am, for anybody who is listening that is a K through 12 educator, I run the Full Sail Writing Conference out of Full Sail University. And this year, for the first year, we are opening it up to K through 12 educators, totally free of charge. So if you look for the Full Sail K through 12 education group on Facebook, you can join that, and we'll be putting all the registration information there. You can also email me about more information. And we don't have our information up yet, but it is 100% free. It is all day. We have people representing novels and screenplays and television and everything. We have writers who represent everything from the Muppets to Star Wars, to New York Times bestsellers to short fiction. So we've got everything, cross-board poetry. We've got it all. And it is 100% free to K through 12 educators. And that would be September 25th all day through Zoom. So, we're in a COVID age, so it's going to be free. But if you're interested in that, you can find the Full Sail Education K through 12 page on Facebook, or you can email me and I can get you information once we have it, because I don't have it yet, because we're still building the registration form because it's not September yet.
My goodness. Oh, that sounds like an amazing conference, particularly for educators.
I hope so. Well, and it's really for writers overall. We're opening it up to educators because we really, we want to kind of welcome them into this, but it's not like we're teaching you how to teach. Like we have a couple workshops like that, but it is for writers. We have something about, collaborative writing, like how do you write with other writers? And we have a session on, your different paths to publication, if you want to go traditional or self-publishing. I mean, we have tons of thematic branding. How do you brand yourself as a writer? We have a session on that. So it's not just for educators, it's for writers as a whole, but it's free for K through 12 educators.
Wow. All right, Jennie Jarvis, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Sure.
First question. What part of a kid's movie completely scared you?
What part of a kid's movie completely scared me? Oh my gosh. I think most of the Dark Crystal was just terrifying. All those puppets, those were all pretty scary. That, and I think just Pee Wee Herman's laugh. Ha ha! It's just, I can't do it, but just his laugh is pretty terrifying.
Yeah, I got that.
Oh, Large Marge and Pee Wee's Big Adventure. That was friggin' terrifying. Large Marge's eyes busting out of her head. Yes, Large Marge. There you go. That's a real answer.
What would the world be like if there were a whole bunch of Jennie Jarvises walking around?
Oh, it would be so annoying. Everybody would be talking all the time. I have the hardest time like shutting up. Like when I start talking, it would be so annoying. We'd all be yelling at each other. We'd all think, oh, I have the right way of doing. Yeah. So no, it would be, no, that would not, no, let's not make that come into fruition. Let's not send that vibe out into the universe.
Final question. If someone gave you $50 to spend today, what would you buy?
Oh goodness. If I had $50 to spend today, probably more bullet journals. I have like 4 of them. No, I have 5 of them. 2 of them have writing in them. So probably journals. I love bullet journaling. I absolutely swear by bullet journaling. So if I could spend it on myself, bullet journaling. Or I'd probably no, this is the real answer. I would probably go to dinner at Disney. My family and I, we love going down to Disney. We'll eat dinner at all the hotels and everything. And we love eating at Disney. So probably that. They have the best like plant-based options. So that.
Good information to keep in mind.
I told you, I talk a lot. This is why we don't want a lot of Jennies running around. It would be weird. I already have one other Jennie running around. His name is James and he's 5 and he has a mini me. And it is interesting looking at that reflection of myself back at me. He's really cute though. So I'm happy about that. He's my son, if that wasn't clear.
Jennie Jarvis, thank you so much for stopping by.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Jennie Jarvis worked in the film and television industry around the world. She served as a script analyst, producing coverage for producers, investors, actors, and writers. She has operated as a freelance script consultant for over 15 years, working with clients worldwide, and she wrote and directed a number of short narratives and documentary films. Major credits include The Matrix Revolutions, Accepted, American Idol, and more, and has won awards for her screenplays, essays, poetry, and short fiction, as well as appearing in Writer's Digest magazine and the Florida Writer. And she teaches writing at Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. For more information on Jennie, visit her at jenniejarvis.com or on Twitter at JarvisWrites. Learn, network, and grow at the 20th Annual Florida Writers Conference, October 14th through 17th, 2021. The Florida Writer Youth Conference, October 16th, 2021. Make your mark. Experience the synergy and supercharge your writing career at the 20th Annual Florida Writers Conference. For more information, visit floridawriters.org. Until next time.